If diagnoses grew on trees, I would have an orchard, but
That was beautiful. How long did you practice that?
uh, that's all I was saying over and over in the car on the way here.
Hi, friends, and welcome back to another episode of Pickles and Vodka, the mental health podcast where imperfect people have imperfect conversations. I'm trying out a new tagline, in case you didn't notice. I was on someone's podcast the other day, and I used it just out of the blue, and they liked it so much, they said I should try it out for real. So, yeah. All I know is it's fewer words to say, and I'm a big fan of that. Welcome. My name's Christina, your host, and this is like the fifth time I've been trying to record this because I'm currently in the middle of a group chat with my family. We came to the conclusion that out of all 9 of us, 7 of us are moving in the next month. It's pretty crazy. I'm moving from Seattle to Virginia. My brother Andrew is moving to Guam for the Coast Guard. My sister Caroline is changing careers and moving in with my parents for a little bit. I have another brother who's getting married, another brother who's just all over the place. And then my 2 youngest sisters are getting a place together. One of them is in Alaska, the other one's in Virginia. We're all moving to the same area in Virginia. It's pretty crazy. And also don't feel like you have to keep track of all that because I don't even know what my siblings are doing half the time. I used to give my parents shit for like getting our names wrong as kids, and now I totally get it. It happens. Yeah, it's exciting to be moving, but it's also bittersweet, obviously. My time in Seattle has been really difficult, but it's also been rewarding. I've met a lot of great people and made some connections, and just I've never enjoyed a place geographically as much as I have Seattle. It's truly the most beautiful place I've ever lived. I found myself going on walks through the neighborhood and wondering, oh, is this the last time I'll see this or do this or taste this? I just want to do all the things. But because I'm trying to do all the things, I'm not paying enough attention to the other stuff like packing and getting rid of stuff, seeing people that I want to see. It's just kind of a mess, but I'm dealing with it. It's fine. I just want to fast forward the next 2 months and just start my new life already. But I also recognize that that's kind of a toxic place to come from because I have a history of trying to escape my problems by moving somewhere new. It's not uncommon. Many of you probably do it too. I wrote a Facebook post about it a few weeks ago, and I think I said that when I moved to Seattle, I felt like I was escaping something, but now that I'm leaving Seattle, I feel like I'm chasing something. And I'm just going to try to focus on the positives. Today's episode is a fun one. Holy crap. Also, I haven't said holy crap since I was like a 12-year-old in church. What is wrong with me? I interview my ex-boyfriend, Andrew Stevens. It was definitely a first for me. I mean, I'm friends with most of my exes because I generally try to choose to be with people that I enjoy, even after we break up. But I've never had anyone on the podcast before. So he is the first person that I have dated to be on the podcast. And it's just a really good conversation. It's a little awkward at first. There's some laughs. Yeah, I'm not going to ruin any of it, but I'm really excited for y'all to listen. My mental health has not been the greatest. In fact, today was a pretty bad day. As much as I like to joke around and talk about positive things, I think it's just as important to talk about the negative things I'm feeling. I'm feeling really anxious and overwhelmed about moving. I still need to sell or donate most of my stuff. I don't know for certain what vehicle I'm going to be driving across the country yet. And I'm getting broker by the day because my unemployment checks stopped coming. But the benefit to that is that next week I start training for my new job, which is super exciting. I know it'll all be okay. Like, good things are happening. It's really hard for me to see the big picture sometimes. And do you ever just second guess every one of your decisions? Like, I'm almost 29. I'll be 29 next week. And I can't even decide what movie to watch on Netflix, let alone where to move or what job to do. It's just paralyzing. And I know moving to Virginia is the right move for me right now. But as is my style, I have been finding lots of reasons to doubt myself and that decision in the last few weeks. I've been making some new friends, some cool new connections, having a lot of adventures, and part of me is like, maybe you shouldn't leave. What would happen if you stayed here? But I think that way of thinking can be really dangerous. It's kind of like online dating, right? Like, you'll find someone that you really click with, but there's a part of you that really just wants to keep looking because something better might be out there. You might have this amazing person in your life, but just knowing that there's something better out there, it kind of fucks with your head. And I feel like the same way. Like, I have a perfectly decent job in Virginia waiting for me, perfectly decent apartment. I'll be close to all my family. I'll be able to save money. And yet, part of me is asking myself, well, okay, what are you giving up by moving? It's just an endless feedback loop, and it's exhausting. And I'm just so tired of not trusting myself. I feel like at this point in my life, things should come more easily. At least decisions should become easier. I don't know. This is all kind of bullshit because everyone is an overgrown child who doesn't know what they're doing, as we've established before on this podcast. You all. I'm tired, and life is so crazy. That's all I'm going to say. Life is crazy. With that said, I'm just going to give you my interview with my ex before you turn this off completely. I will be here again next week with a new episode. Hopefully I won't be as much of a mess, and I'll be able to give you some more exciting updates. Until then, stay cool, stay safe, and enjoy the show. This is really awkward.
Hello. Are we doing the podcast now?
Yeah, we're doing it.
I guess usually when I listen to the podcast, like, I hear like the intro bit, and I forgot that's recorded separately. So now we're in it.
Yeah. I am here on my tiny couch with Andrew Stevens.
That's me.
My ex-boyfriend.
Yep. Special episode.
Yeah.
Put in an air horn there, please.
Andrew is a writer and a mental health advocate, and I respect him a lot, and I'm really happy that we're still friends. But today we're going to be talking about his mental health journey and, like, our thing that happened.
Thing that happened. So it makes it sound like an atomic bomb that was dropped somewhere.
I mean, wasn't it?
I don't think so. There's not that much damage.
Okay, you know what? It's all metaphorical.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What?
Dead air.
Oh my god, I suck at this. You need... What's your experience? Like, tell us a little bit about, like, your childhood experience. Stop laughing at me!
Do you want to do that again?
What do you want to start?
No, I just meant, like...
What do you... This is how... I was afraid it would go like this.
Yeah, it's all right.
It's okay. It's gonna be fun.
Yeah, no, of course it's going to be a little weird.
Yeah.
Okay, did you want to, like, ask me? Are we... I
Just
don't know
go.
how... do you
like,
just want me...
what do you want to talk about today? Because I'm obviously bad at asking you questions. I can't do this to save my life. So, like, Andrew, what would you like to talk about?
Well, it is your interview podcast, so I'll go any direction that you would like me to. But,
but you're really good at taking over conversation.
That's because I got a lot to say.
Exactly. That's why you're on the podcast. So say something.
Am I not saying things at this moment? I don't know. My childhood experience is that in my mental health scenario growing up. Is that what we're?
Well, I usually start by asking people how mental health was approached growing up in their household, and I already know this about you, but the guests don't. So, in a nutshell, they don't know anything about you. You could be just like some dude.
I assume that's kind of the case with any guest that's on the show.
Anyway, yeah.
Let's see, I got a whole litany of disorders. I've been officially diagnosed. Well, diagnoses, if diagnoses grew on trees, I would have an orchard, but
that was beautiful. How long did you practice that?
That's all I was saying over and over in the car on the way here. No, but for real, so I did not have a family that talked very much about mental health, and that is part of why I am a person who talks a lot about mental health. That and the fact that I've had depression pretty much my whole life, and anxiety on top of that. I've been diagnosed with major depressive disorder, generalized anxiety disorder, persistent depressive disorder. I had one therapist say antisocial personality disorder, but all of the rest have disagreed vehemently, so I'm not so sure about that one.
That doesn't really sound like you.
And then in the past few years, I've learned, unofficially, but because it's hard to get an official diagnosis, that I very likely suffer from, or live with, I think is the correct term, nonverbal learning disorder. And that's kind of, it's some say it's on the autism spectrum, or at least in the autism ballpark. But it's also kind of viewed as a learning disability, similarly to dyslexia or dyscalculia. But basically, it's like a visual spatial learning disorder, and that affects me in a lot of ways.
Yeah, when I met you, I had no idea what that was, but I quickly learned that you are not a visual person. I would point out like a house I liked or something, or like something someone was wearing, and I would be like, "Oh, that's so pretty," and Andrew would just be like, "I literally don't care."
I believe you. I believe that you. If you say so, then yes, it is. But I would for someone
who doesn't really notice that kind of stuff, you are a very colorful person.
I think that might be why, because I was so repressed and assuming that I had to be to follow in the suburban wear plaid and button-ups kind of mindset, have your short haircut and your, I don't know, like 9-to-5 style, because I'd never really examined my own style. I grew up without ever even thinking to do so because of nonverbal learning disorder. And once I realized, oh wait, like you can express yourself like in the way that you look, like I went hardcore in the other direction and grew a mullet, painted my nails, and I don't know.
Wearing a psychedelics t-shirt, one of the many in your collection.
Yeah, I got bolder, and it took a while for me to get to that level, I guess.
But what you might have like explained it a little bit before, but what is your like the nonverbal learning disorder? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Like I was really uneducated about it, so
most people are like I've tried finding books on the subject. I've read one independently published book that was kind of sort of a memoir and sort of not really. It was sort of like guidelines to living with it. But yeah, it's not in the DSM-5. It's debated whether or not it should be in the next edition.
I didn't know that.
But it's unclear whether it's related to autism, whether it's just more learning disability, whether it is a form of autism. It's really uncertain because there's a lot of crossover. Things that are really common are difficulties with motor skills. Your gross and fine motor skills are both impacted by it. So I can't, I've never been able to hold a pencil properly or fold a piece of paper in half.
Wait, what?
I can't do it. Like, it is a struggle. It doesn't make sense to me. And it makes it difficult for me to follow visual instructions. And so I was really smart kid growing up, and I was always the first to finish tests, but I was the last kid in my entire grade to learn how to tie his shoes. I just couldn't figure out how to do it. And same with riding a bike. It's just a lot of things that people kind of learn to pick up visually are completely blank to me. And I also have aphantasia is very common with a nonverbal learning disorder, and that's basically when you don't have a mind's eye. Like, what I only really have learned very recently is that most people can close their eyes and visualize something. You can think of a color and you see it in front of you.
He's closing his eyes as he speaks.
And when I do it, it's just my eyelids. I've never been able to visualize anything. And it blew my mind realizing that when people are literally like, imagine your happy place, they're literally imagining a happy place and not like the idea of their happy place. So it's the kind of thing where it affects you in a lot of ways, in how you learn, in how you interact with the world. It's really common for folks with nonverbal learning disorder to have social skill difficulties, which is part of how it gets confused with autism sometimes, on account of, like, we have difficulty making eye contact sometimes, but it's more of not knowing where to look, or we don't necessarily pick up on the little body language cues that everybody else or not everybody else, but the average person seems like they're more able to pick up on, and that can make you socially awkward. It often doesn't help if you're physically awkward as well, which is usually we're not good at sports because we don't have hand-eye coordination. So
sorry, I just pictured you playing sports,
right?
And it was funny.
It's I actually just took a haul of stuff from my mom's house the other day, and I dismantled my one and only T-ball trophy that I got second place for, and
Whoa.
I remember being in left field and literally spinning around in circles because I didn't care what was going on and not paying attention, yet we still won second place, so it must have been a pretty good team.
Wow, I'm shook. So tell me, what is your happy place, Andrew?
What is my happy place? I mean,
I'm partially joking, but for real.
My face on my cat, honestly, listening to him purr.
Oh yeah, how have you not mentioned Little Peppers yet?
I just did.
Okay.
We're what, 15 minutes into recording?
You should have just come right out at the beginning and been like, "Hi, I'm Andrew Stevens. I'm a cat dad."
You didn't ask me to explain who I was.
I didn't. You're right. This is a first for me, y'all. I am making it up as I go. And I don't think I could do this with anyone but Andrew, because I don't know, you're just easy to be friends with. Like,
we have a foundation of being able to talk openly about ourselves, and I think that's probably good for this podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of shit that went down when we were together, and it just wasn't good timing. I always tell people, like, I had a whole ass relationship in the middle of the pandemic. Like, we started dating during COVID, and we broke up during COVID.
Yeah, and really, like, I wouldn't say, like, a whole lot of shit. Well, I mean, yes, like...
It was.
But really, when I think, like, a whole lot of shit went down, it's more like we lived through the fucking nightmare of COVID.
Well, yes.
Like, every shit that went down was related to that.
Well, yeah, I mean, do you want to... I don't even know how to start. Where were you at, like, mentally when we met?
Oh, that is a really interesting question. When we met, so March 2020, everybody knows what happens when March 2020 hit. That was a couple months before we met. My mom had just entered the mental hospital for the third time. She has kind of a crippling anxiety issue that only came up when she divorced my dad in her... when she was about 60, and she's been hospitalized now thrice. So I was already kind of feeling that was a hard start to sudden total isolation. Being a person who lives alone with his cat and was working from home, it was true and utter isolation.
You used to work downtown in one of those high rises, like. Take the bus every day.
Yeah, I used to be big city boy, and I was around people all the time and going to bars all the time, and suddenly, just seeing friends, and suddenly, completely isolated. I'd really gotten upset with my mom as she had gone into the mental hospital this time around, because it had largely occurred from her stopping her meds without talking to a doctor about it, and not continuing with therapy, so she didn't have any strategies to deal with the anxiety when it came back.
It's really hard to help someone who doesn't want to help themselves.
Yeah.
Or who doesn't take action to help themselves. Right?
Yeah, it's a really difficult thing, and so I think I had started. You and I met around. I think we started talking on Bumble in May.
It was May, because I had spent the first 6 weeks of quarantine in Virginia with my family. And then I came back to Seattle, and the lockdown had ended, but it was still everything was still closed. You had to wear masks everywhere. So people were kind of venturing out, but not really. It was a weird time.
Yeah, and I was very much not venturing out, because I'd been following the science closely and reading the news very, very, very closely.
You were like...
I mean, I work from home at a computer, and I have a lot of downtime, and during a time like this, I had nothing to do but consume information, and
go on the apps.
And yeah, I got plenty, I also have a fucking anxiety disorder. So I was constantly trying to be hyper aware of this crazy, I hate the word, but unprecedented thing that was going on. So I think around the time we met, I had started to repair things with my mom. She had gotten out of the mental hospital, or had been for a little while, I think. And I had also decided to stop smoking weed, because at the beginning of the pandemic, and even before then, I was smoking weed every day for a very, very long time, months and months and months, with breaks here and there. But I've been I would consider myself a pothead, or, a pot addict, cannabis addict, I guess is the fancy term. And I have been for a good long time. I'm a high functioning one, but an addict nonetheless. And I was taking an indefinite break that I hadn't given definition to at the time. And I think when we finally met in person, I had kind of started...
You threw out your bong.
Yeah, I had thrown out my old bong, and eventually I, got more comfortable getting back into it again.
Yeah, because I wanted to smoke still, and
which was very fair. And also, I realized I had done all the productive things I could do.
Yeah, there's a certain point during the pandemic that you just kind of gave up and let yourself do nothing. It's really interesting thinking about moving forward in the future, how people are going to study this and look at it.
How it
affected us. If you're from the future listening to this, hi. Also, we're all fucked up.
Yeah, I don't think they're not gonna have radios 10 years from now. The whole world's gonna have burned to the ground.
This isn't Do you know how podcasts work?
I have an idea.
You listen to podcasts on the radio?
Yeah.
What?
Podcast radio, it's a thing.
No, it's not. I don't believe you. Okay, so yeah, we met. We dated a little bit. It was fun. And all along, though, we were only seeing each other.
Yeah.
We couldn't see, I was seeing Connor, and that's it.
Yeah, no, I mean...
You weren't seeing your friends.
Very rarely. That's... it's hard for somebody that you met during a pandemic to be the foundation of your life, of the only social interaction that you have. It's a lot of pressure to put on somebody who you don't know what you guys are going to be like outside. You don't know if you get along with each other's friends. You don't know if you're going to like going to the same places or like leading the same lifestyle, because all you're doing is hanging out at home. And
it's a lot. It gets pretty heavy. I am the kind of person who likes to constantly be up and going and doing things and have a plan. And then
I like to have plans as well, but I have a lot more comfort with downtime, and honestly, years and years of depression.
I was just about to say, the
for,
depression had a lot to do with
yeah,
it.
depression had kind of trained me to be okay with isolating and staying at home, especially if I was smoking a lot of weed. But it doesn't necessarily make it easy for a relationship, especially when. And yeah, I mean, like I don't get me wrong, I like to go and do stuff, but I am a homebody on one level, and we couldn't really even see like what to what degree I was actually a homebody within COVID. It more just seems like, okay, well, all we have to do is nothing, so I guess we'll keep doing that.
Let's watch HBO and order food from a different restaurant. It's like, it gets pretty old, and we weren't the only ones going through that, no. It was hard on a lot of people. A lot of people moved during COVID. A lot of people broke up. A lot of people had babies.
Yeah, got married. I know people who got married. I know people who had babies, who moved away, who entered relationships and ended relationships, and
it's such a weird time.
And yet, and even weirder, we're not seeing really what's going on with our friends or the people that we normally talk to, unless you're in one of those folks who's in constant contact with someone on a Zoom call. I know that we all kind of at least my friend group, got kind of fucking tired of it by the end of the winter. We were just like, we're not seeing each other, but we're not Zooming either. We're just like, this isn't the same. We're tired of having to watch two people have a conversation while the rest of us sit around waiting for a time to speak.
That's true. That sucks.
It wasn't good for friend groups, and it affected a lot of people in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I mean, and eventually, I met your friend group, and it was such a weird summer. We had the smoke, the wildfires.
Yep.
Downtown Seattle looked like a hellscape. It was hard to breathe. And that was in the middle of COVID. And I don't remember when. Here's a question. When do you think our relationship started becoming a stressor?
Probably once we got into the fall and the winter, and it became even harder to go out and see friends at all, and it was literally just you and me, and we I remember you saying that the romance was gone because all we were doing was sitting around in pajamas. We had skipped over what seems like you would do 15 years down the line in a relationship without having any of the, I don't know, and we also didn't have a bunch of fun memories together because we couldn't. We literally couldn't make any.
Remember when we went to that Thai restaurant for the fifth time?
It's we could occasionally have a really great day, but it wasn't as often enough as you'd want in a developing relationship, and so I think that things started to become a stressor in the winter, and I think both of our mental health started to decline pretty rapidly then.
I think when I met you, I was definitely binging and purging in Virginia before I came. And then there was a time when I met you that I stopped, I think.
So when we met in person, the reason that we met in person, that we were willing to break COVID.
Oh my God.
Because we dated video style for weeks, for a long, almost a month maybe. Because maybe, could it, yeah, something like a month.
Oh my God, I forgot about this.
I think we talked on Bumble for a couple weeks.
Yeah.
And then we talked on video for a month before we even met up because we didn't really know what was okay. I didn't know it was okay, and I didn't know when to let somebody in, but the reason that we met up was because you were going to go away to rehab for bulimia and you didn't know for how long, or if they'd take your phone, or if you would be able to continue things, and so we decided, fuck it, it's June 1st.
Was it exactly June 1st?
I think it was June 1st, and there was some sort of new COVID change in what we were allowed to do. It was the very tiniest, maybe the first phase 4 or something.
Yeah.
I can't even exactly, I mean, not phase 4, phase 1.
I don't know.
But
one of the phases.
Something had shifted very slightly, and you were going away the next day, and you didn't know for how long, so we decided to meet up. And
basically, my therapist was I was seeing a new online therapist,
And when she heard about my binging and purging, she refused to see me because I was at risk of cardiac arrest. And she was like, you need to go to treatment. It was very strange. Like, she didn't even know me. And anyway, I went to the ER and stayed there for like hours and hours.
I remember it being like a 7-hour day.
Yeah, it was, and they took my blood, they did labs, and then they were like, your labs are all normal, you can go. Yeah. Even though I said I was having suicidal thoughts.
Yeah, they checked your BMI, as fucking useless as that is, and then they checked your blood, and they were like, everything's good. It doesn't matter that this is a horrifying problem that's been affecting you for 14 years, and it's even worse right now. Like, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter that you're having suicidal ideation. They just let you go because you weren't the right weight, or you weren't the right...
I was so emotional that day. Not only that, but like, that was
like, what, the day after that we met up?
Yes. I had met you for the first time, and that was exciting, but then I had this happen the next day, and then I had to like go back and text you and be like, just kidding, I'm not going away. Like, that was weird. I didn't want to do that.
You felt really invalidated by the whole experience, and it didn't really
set us off on a great note.
Well, yeah, and it made you not feel particularly eager about seeking help again, understandably, at that time.
And I didn't seek help again at all when we were together, and I think that's a big problem.
Yeah, and I had kind of said at the very beginning of our relationship how important it was to me that you were pursuing help, but of course, like, as COVID was going on, like, you have to make compromises there. Like, I couldn't really expect you to be doing your absolute best or working your hardest toward getting better in the middle of quarantine.
That's something we could talk about, is like, obviously everyone deserves love, but there's also a point where you need to work on yourself before you should be with someone else. So like, you are mentally ill, I am mentally ill, we are both amazing people who deserve love, but also we have all these issues that could turn a relationship sour. Like, that's what happened with us. So like, I don't know, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think it's important to be working on it.
Yeah.
And what's difficult is that, and I've thought for the longest time that working on it is so non-specific. And I've dated people before who, like, you'd call them, and you did not do this, but someone that you would call them out on something that they'd done, and like a behavior of theirs that they repeated, and they'd be like, I'm working on it. But they weren't. They were just aware of it. And that's not the same. There are a good number of folks out there who have gotten to the very first step in their mental health journey, which is becoming aware of the problem, or even becoming aware of why there is a problem.
Yeah.
But there's more to it than that. It's that mantra I stolen from last podcast on the left, that mental health is not your fault, but it is your responsibility.
I quoted you that saying
Marcus
that
Parks from last podcast.
Yeah,
that says it over and over.
I mean, it's so true. And I think if you're with anyone, like, I don't think you should not date someone just because they have a mental illness. Not at all.
No, definitely
but not. They should be assuming some sort of responsibility for it. But that's hard because, like, it looks different for every person.
Yeah, and I also think that if you're I think that's part of why it's important to be open and vulnerable about what is going on in your life, mental health wise, especially with a partner. And unfortunately, that can sometimes make it harder to find someone who's willing to take that on, whatever that may be. But also, it's the hiding, and it's hiding things and holding back that can really turn into problems.
And I did hide stuff. I did start hiding stuff from you.
And you said you'd done the same with your previous relationship.
Yeah, I mean, I was eating. When I was with you, I would eat normally. Then I would go home and binge and purge. Or, like, I would take a bunch of Benadryl before I met you, just so I could feel, like, I don't know, pleasant. So I would be in a pleasant mood. It's so fucked up. Like, I don't think I ever told you that part.
You did.
Okay.
And I don't think it's like, I mean, like, it's not good, but it's not so fucked up. It's not like we're all just trying to do whatever we could to get by, and sometimes you like, during this weird fucking bizarre time where you're just trying to, like, have a good day with your significant other, like, you flail and you reach out for things that maybe aren't necessarily going to help with that, but you've convinced yourself that they have, and it's pretty understandable, honestly. I don't think it's all that fucked up.
Thank you.
It sucks.
It does suck. It really sucked. Like, things really, really started to suck for us. And yeah, I mean, I feel like nothing big happened.
No,
it just kind of fizzled out.
We were just both clearly unhappy. We'd both been depressed for a long time. I know that
Oh, we said during the election.
Yeah.
We were going to break up.
Yeah, very early on in November, I think we had talked about breaking up, but we were also like, maybe we're just both, like, it was also a really difficult year politically.
Yeah.
Like, overall, just, if you're on the side of left politics, like, it's just been hard to really see, just everything happening in America in 2020, whether it's, the failure of our ability to handle COVID or Trump being president or even Biden becoming president.
Yeah.
It was just...
so we didn't want to put a breakup on top of that.
Yeah.
So we were like, let's just wait and re-examine it in a month.
It was an understandably volatile time. I
still don't think that was like the right decision.
I mean, I don't know. I don't regret that decision. That, to me, like, yeah, it prolonged things for another 3 weeks or so.
I had a gut feeling then. I just knew.
I think I might have, but I was willing to see, like, is it so bad? Because my anxiety was really fucking high.
Yeah.
Like,
also, I, like, legitimately like you.
Yeah,
and, like,
exactly. I was like...
it's hard to find someone who understands mental health stuff like you do. So, like, I think we just kind of banded together based on that.
Yeah, we were kind of like, okay, the negatives of us trying to see if this works for a few more weeks are pretty minimal, so we might as well, like, even if it doesn't, like, it was worth it on the small chance that it was just, anxiety related to the election, because
everyone was
what else
having
would
that.
we have been doing,
Exactly.
Like, it's not like we had great big things to do. It was November 2020.
I don't even...
But we only made it another few weeks, I think. And then I think we were just like, we were just both feeling ultra, ultra low and depressed one day. And I think, what was it like? I don't know. I think I asked you, like, do you feel any different from when we talked a few weeks ago? And you said no. And I said, neither do I. And we cried and ended it.
Yeah. And it was hard for a while. I think for me, initially I felt pretty okay, but then it hit me a few weeks later.
Well, yeah, because we were breaking up still into quarantine. We were going back from, okay, I have one person.
We went back a phase during this time.
We had one person, and we were kind of still able to see other people in the summer, and then it was November, and we had the winter to look forward to, the gray Seattle, seasonal affective disorder
perfect
pandemic.
time to break up.
Yeah,
we picked a great time to break up.
And that affected both of us. And I mean, it was affecting us in the October and September as well. That was part of what made things not work in the first place.
I remember, like, I went the day we broke up. I took the bus from your place. I went to Connor's house and just told him what happened. I was sitting on the couch with my cat, and I just, like, felt weirdly at peace. And I remember thinking, oh, this isn't too bad. I think we'd made the right decision. And then a few weeks later, the shit hit the fan, and I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna die alone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I remember listening to your podcast. You eventually released, I think, a tape, like a audio journal from that time. I think you said exactly that.
Yeah. I think it was the Bulimia Diaries, episode 41, if you want to go listen. Self-plug. How did you, like... Oh, I don't know. We didn't talk for a while.
I mean, we talked. We just...
we never cut each other out.
No,
and,
we never... We saw each other every now and then.
Yeah.
Just checking in.
Yeah, and, like, I'm friends with your friends. And,
yeah, there was never any bad blood. I never felt like either you did anything wrong.
Can I just say, you have a really special group of people in your life. Like, your friends have been nothing but kind to me. Just from meeting me, and then, like, when we broke up, a few people, like, messaged me to see if I was okay, and like, they stayed friends with me, and I've hung out with some of them.
Yeah.
Like, wow, that's really hard to find, especially in Seattle.
Yeah,
especially since you met them all. It's a bar. You met them all at a bar, and I don't even drink. Like,
and I think having, like, that wasn't. I've lived in Seattle or its adjacent suburbs on and off for 20 years, and yeah, it's really fucking hard to find a friend group that you really vibe with or whatever, and I think I really hadn't had it that long when COVID hit, and that was part of what really hurt, you know?
Yeah.
I remember when I had that first bizarre sobbing spell in the middle of COVID.
Oh, you should talk about that.
It was a summer day. We had gotten a chance to go to my favorite bar, The Rendezvous, and hang out with people that we hadn't seen all of pandemic and see a handful of them, even though we had to, you know, stay seated exactly in the seat you're in because, you know, I cared about the people who worked there, so we weren't going to break the rules of the bar, but we were still in a phase where it was very specific about where you could sit and how many people to a table, and maybe, I mean, fortunately I had patios, but it was summer, but I remember we came home that day, and I think I had been off my antidepressants for a couple days because I knew I was going to be drinking, and it had been a while since I drank, and I didn't want that to like black out from, you know, a lack of alcohol tolerance and the mix of my medication.
Was that the night we hotboxed the bathroom?
Maybe. I don't know. It's possible. I don't think so.
Okay.
Because maybe, I don't know. I can't remember which specific night it was, but what happened was like I think this was around the time of the wildfires, and Vida, Oregon, this tiny little town where my grandparents had lived at one point, pretty much burned completely to the ground in the wildfires, or a huge chunk of it did. And I remember I got caught on just like a memory from there, like while I was attempting to fall asleep, and some combination of that and the grief from not seeing my friends, this feeling, all of it built up, and me being off my medication, so I was able to drink, like all of that combined, I think I woke up in the middle of the night loudly sobbing.
Yeah.
Like I woke you up, I think.
That was intense.
Like nothing like that had ever happened to me before, you know.
I didn't know how to help. I couldn't help.
Gone off every now and then I've gone off my antidepressants because I know, like, oh, today might be a heavy drinking day. I know my antidepressant and alcohol don't mix so well. It's not the smartest thing in the world to handle your meds like that, but it's something that has worked for me in the past. But I've never had a like, oh, looks like you've been holding all of this grief in. Here's the time to release it. And I think it was seeing my friends and getting caught on this weird memory and having it loop around in my brain, just bouncing around, fully lacking serotonin, and yeah,
you wrote an essay about it afterwards.
Yeah, I jotted down a whole bunch of stuff on I think it's on Medium.
I'll link your stuff in the show notes.
Sure, cool.
But yeah, that was intense.
Yeah, and I've only had that happen one time since, and it was different, but.
I mean, you can talk about it if you want.
Yeah, well, like, I mean, this one, like, I kept to myself. I did not, the new person I'm dating, I did not wake her up very deliberately because I didn't want to, I had a really good day, and I had a really good weekend, honestly, and I had taken off my antidepressants again so that I could drink during the weekend. It was after being vaccinated, I think one of the first times I've been able to go out with my new girlfriend, unvaccinated, her meeting my friends, and I just had a really good weekend, and I laid down in bed, and she fell asleep, and I could not stop thinking about, is Christina doing okay? I bet she's not, and I'm terrified of that, and I started thinking this specific thought of my sister, or I mean, your sister and I are friends on Facebook, and I imagined in my head your sister posting, you know, a Christina's in heaven now Facebook status, and I imagine just, I don't know, like knowing how bad things have been for you with bulimia. I think this was after you'd been through rehab and after the relapse, and into, like, I'd listened to your bulimia diaries, and I knew things. I'd listened to them relatively recently by then, and I knew things weren't going amazing for you. And I started quietly sobbing so I wouldn't wake up my new girlfriend and have to explain to her why I was crying about my ex-girlfriend. Things were too new. I was not ready to try to explain that while I was crying. So I went into the other room with my cat, and I just laid down with him and sobbed for a while. And then I, called up Christina, I think, the next day, because I was like, I need to make sure she's at least a little bit okay.
I think that was no, was that the first time we talked?
No, definitely not.
But yeah, it was nice to hear from you, and I just remember, I still feel like sometimes when you have a mental illness, you feel like it doesn't affect anyone outside of you. At least for me, it's hard to realize that it affects other people. So to hear that from you was really sobering. And actually, I have a story to tell you about my mom. I might cut this out, but like, I was talking to my mom on the phone yesterday and telling her that I was struggling, and I was saying that, oh, my eating disorder just wants me to lose weight so I can be, skinny at my brother's wedding in August. And then my mom was like, no, you can't lose weight because then you're going to steal attention from your brother. People are going to be looking at you. She said that.
Oof.
And then she went on to tell me that 2 years ago when I was at my lowest weight, everyone was talking about me behind my back and no one said anything to me. She was like, yeah, everyone was saying things to me. Random people on Facebook were saying things to me. And like, how am I supposed to respond to that?
Well, yeah,
it was so heavy.
That is heavy. But can I ask you, like, I know that you've kind of told me before that the way your bulimia works is externalizing how you feel on the inside and intentionally, well, not entirely intentionally, but in part using that to show how sick and how hurt you are to your parents. And you've told me that your bulimia has put the thought in your head to get as skinny as possible when you next see your parents so that they'll notice. And we've kind of had conversations about that before.
It's just, they do notice. People do notice. And also, like, my life's going pretty good now. I don't have anything broken to show, except that I don't know. I feel like I'm just broken on the inside. No matter what happens to me, like no matter how good I'm doing, I'll always be broken. I'm working on that with my therapist.
Yeah,
we don't have to talk about that, but
pretty normal with mental illness.
Yeah. But yeah, that was fucking heavy.
Yeah, no, it's a hard thing.
And
I mean, especially saying that, especially if she followed that up with saying, here, everybody was talking about you behind your back, which the point of it is not necessarily to have more people looking at your body, but to have people helping you. The point is that it's a cry for help, is my understanding.
Yeah.
When you say you want to externalize it and show the hurt, it's because you want help. But the problem is that your parents and other people have not responded by helping. And that's why the system itself is broken. The bulimia is not doing what it's supposed to allegedly do.
Exactly. And I was just talking to another guest about this, how we don't develop these disorders for shits and giggles. Like, we develop them for a reason. Like, it's a way to cope with something.
Yeah.
I mean, same with you. Like, your anxiety and stuff.
It stems from very specific instances in a lot of scenarios. I can pinpoint, that, like when I really dig into it, I can often be like, it's because of that I have driving anxiety. It's because, my mom had seizures when she was driving that I have driving anxiety, or that my dad got into a car crash that I have driving anxiety, or that, the anxiety is best described as the intolerance of uncertainty, and having nonverbal learning disorder gives you a lot of additional uncertainty when it comes to social interactions and world interactions. You can't visualize even what other things are going to be like, and it.
I meant to ask you this earlier. Do you have any resources for the what's it called?
Nonverbal learning disorder, which is needlessly confusing. It's because actually people with nonverbal learning disorder have strong verbal acumen, which is confusing because there's a thing called nonverbal autism, which is the opposite. It means that you don't speak, you're not verbal. But this means, no, it's a learning disorder that isn't verbal. It's like, why did we do this?
I'm confused.
Right? But no, so like I have tried to read some books, but there's very little. Like,
what about online communities?
I've looked into a little bit of that. I've followed some Twitter accounts, but even they're all very small, like very small. I'm blown away when I am able to read like an articulate blog post about it, because like it's so rare, and there are quite a few books actually about raising kids who have nonverbal learning disorder now. That does exist. There's quite a bit of resources for teachers, educators, and parents, but there's almost no resources for adults living with it. And I've scoured and read some garbage books in my attempt to find something like that, and it doesn't really, to my knowledge, it doesn't really exist.
What are the main symptoms to look out for? Like,
very noticeable is early on stuff, like childhood things, like that they aren't able to complete tasks in the same way that similar aged peers are able to. And it's not that they're necessarily having trouble in school, but they're probably having trouble with handwriting. They're probably having trouble with mechanical tasks, tying their shoes, riding bikes. It's really common for them to struggle with math, but it's not always one size fits all.
Yeah, of course.
Just as autism is a spectrum, and I've heard that nonverbal learning disorder may be in the ballpark of that contains that spectrum.
Yeah, sorry, that was a hard question to ask you.
You know, there's a lot to it. There are a lot of different ways that it can present itself, but it isn't super noticeable necessarily.
What has been most helpful for you in confronting it, if not treating it, just like handling it?
I've only known about it for a few years, but at least I don't know that I've learned how to combat the problems that I encounter because of it, but I have started on the path toward accepting it, because at least I know, oh my God, like I'm not just stupid. There are reasons why I haven't been able to figure out some of these things that have come so easily to everybody I've always known, that I felt so insecure about. I was looking around at peers who are able to cook or do yoga, or I don't know, just watch a YouTube video on how to tie a tie and follow it. Like things like really normal things that people take for granted, because I see it and I can't do it at all, and I've long felt very insecure about it. And at least knowing there's a reason behind it, there's an actual thing, like that I don't know necessarily the word neurodivergent, neurodiverse.
Yeah, we've used that term on the podcast before. Yeah, I like it.
But that's my understanding, is it's in that ballpark, and learning that I'm not only mentally ill but also neurodivergent. It at least helps me understand, okay, there are reasons for what areas are my weaknesses, and it may not be in my best interest to like work really, really hard on trying to become a sous chef, for instance, you know? Like that wouldn't...
That's random.
I mean, I just like certain, or like, there are things that I don't have to feel so bad about, like, oh, you know what? Maybe it's just okay that I can't do this. I don't know, somebody with dyscalculia is probably like, you know what? I'm probably not going to be an accountant, or...
You know, I was talking to the last guest about that. Well, I haven't published it yet. If you're listening to this, it's going to come out next week. But we were talking about acceptance and the role of acceptance and the difficulty of acceptance.
Yeah, and my current therapist is an acceptance and commitment therapist. Kind of deliberately sought out someone that wasn't a CBT therapist, because I've seen a few of those before, and I like things about it, but I know it's not be-all, end-all, and it's good to learn about other therapies, because there's a reason lots of them exist. It's because brains are really different, like how I'm talking about. There are people who can, like myself, who can't visualize things. There are people who can visualize in incredible detail, and there are some people who can see colors when they think of numbers, and there's
so many different people out there. That's why everyone's so different, and it's so important for everyone to just like focus on your strength and like collaborate with others with different strengths.
And it's also why it's useful to be well versed in possibilities for treatment.
What do you mean by that?
By not limiting yourself to one type of dealing with the adversity that you've dealt with. And that's why I was like, well, I've read a lot about CBT, and for a long time I thought cognitive and behavioral therapy was the way to go. It's the only thing for me. And as I started to learn that a little bit more about other types of therapy, and realizing how many different schools of therapy there are, and how they apply differently and work with different levels of efficacy for different types of people, I kind of wanted to open myself up and be like, maybe it would be useful for me to know more about a lot of different therapies, because if you know a lot, like if you know about these things, you can maybe find the thing that helps you more than something that may have been placed in front of you or that you'd stumbled upon yourself early on in your life, early on in your mental health journey, and decided, okay, this is the way to go. Because it's really easy to find something that works a little bit and be like, okay, I'm gung-ho, like, let's go with that.
The whole time you were talking about this, I was thinking of religion.
Interesting.
And how we are not taught about different religions, at least in my childhood. Like, a lot of Christians that I know, they don't teach their children about all religions. They just teach that Christianity is the only way, and like that's how I was raised. And we all know, we didn't even talk about that on this episode. We could talk for hours about it. It's fucked up. But I'm not gonna subject y'all to that right now.
You know, looking at that from a religion perspective is interesting. The idea of like, this is the one way to do it, and how that mentality bleeds into so many other mentalities in your life other than just religion's the one way to do it. It's this type of masculinity is the one way to be masculine. This type of femininity is the one way to be feminine. That's very tied to American religion, Christianity in particular. And and wouldn't it have been nice had you learned about a whole bunch of religions early on and been able to decide things for yourself, or pick and choose things that you liked from each of them and made those work for your life?
That's the thing. I am not a spiritual person now at all. If I catch any whiff of spirituality, it's like I block it off. But there are benefits from being spiritual. I don't know. I even talking about it now, I'm just like, I don't know how I feel about this. Do you have anything else to say about that topic before we can move on?
No, I guess not.
Well, because I want to talk about your book and your writing.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you've always been a writer. You've had stuff published. I'll let you say it.
Quite literally always been a writer. My mom is thinking about moving, and I have been clearing stuff out of her house to help her with that. And in doing so, we stumbled upon literally the first things I ever wrote, which were, I think I was barely 4 years old. And my mom, she was like a rubber stamp person. She was very crafty and had loads of rubber stamps. And she would make sort of like little comic books where she would rubber stamp Mickey Mouse doing various things with Mickey Mouse characters and like castles and crocodiles and all sorts of things. And I would dictate to her what was happening and what to write down. And we found some of those little, these Mickey Mouse little comic books that I wrote, quote unquote, when I was 4 years old.
You had a ghostwriter.
And alongside that, it was with everything I'd ever been writing, when I was a kid, that I'd printed out anyway, and still something I do today.
So for the last few years, you've been trying to get some stuff published. You're constantly submitting to publications.
Yeah,
and all short form, right?
Generally,
short form fiction.
Yeah, nonfiction.
Nonfiction. My bad.
Yeah, I write for a living, but I work in marketing as a copywriter, and I've done that for 10 years. And only the past few years, I started going to literary open mics in Seattle, and that kind of inspired me. Okay, well, what if I write, I like the idea of doing this. I would like to read something. What if I started writing something on the shorter side? And I had kind of abandoned writing creatively for a while at the time, and that got me trying to write something I could read in the 5 minutes they give you, and that led to me kind of writing more and more of those and deciding to work harder on them and learning about submissions and where to do that. And from there I got a couple things published, and that's kind of inspired me to keep going forward with my creative writing again in a way that I think I paused for a while on account of creatively when you write for a living.
Yes. I just accepted a copywriting job myself, and I'm just like, air horn again. But anyway, you started undertaking this new project, I think shortly before we broke up. It was originally supposed to be sci-fi? Yeah,
I'd started outlining a book, a sci-fi time travel book. It's something I still would like to write at some point. But as I was kind of outlining that, I was jotting down ideas for short pieces as well, and I decided that to get into the practice of being ready to write for this new sci-fi thing that I wanted to do, I'd try a little bit more writing from the stuff I already knew how to do, just to get the juices flowing. And then that kind of turned into a bigger and bigger and bigger project, and now I'm working on a memoir. So
you've been really delving into your family in a way I don't know you have before.
Yeah.
It's been emotional.
Yeah, because everything I'm writing it's creative nonfiction, but it's a memoir specifically about anxiety and intergenerational trauma, and how the feedback loop of anxiety through intergenerational trauma, the things that our parents and grandparents and ancestors and relatives pass down and pass on to us, and examining things like why I am anxious and why my parents were anxious and why their parents were anxious, and how that anxiety affected people in my family and in my own life. So I'm just kind of exploring things through that lens, writing a lot of, I guess, memoir and essay form. It's a lot of kind of separate essays that talk about
I've read
anxiety.
some of them, and they're very good.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're great. I'm excited for it to be, well, finished, but that sounds like pressure.
It'll be a while.
You know what I mean. I'm glad you were working on it.
Yeah, it's
like, at least you're trying. Like, I've been trying to write something for years. I just, like, you took the leap.
It's hard, and
you're trying.
Just like anything, there are setbacks. You know, progress doesn't happen in a straight line, whether it's writing or recovery, you know, and even like right now, like, I've been kind of depressed lately. You know, my depression's very tripartite. I've learned, you know,
very what?
There's three. It comes in three parts. There's three versions of it.
I've never heard that word before. What is it?
Tripartite. It means three parts.
That's a $10 word right there.
I'm an English major. I'm literally right. But so yeah, I have what I call, well, there's the self-hatred, there's the irritability, and there's the malaise. I'm currently in the malaise. It's the part where, like, you don't really want to do the stuff that you normally do, but smoking a ton of weed, not writing, binge watching TV, doing nothing but playing video games.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, I've been in this place before. It was, I think, accompanied with self-hatred at certain times. Sometimes one leads into the other, but I've kind of been in that, and that's normal for me. My depression, I'm trying to be okay with the fact that my depression works in cycles, and why I was saying, you know, journeys aren't, you know, just a one-way street of progress. You know, there are setbacks. Sometimes you have a month where you can't write. Sometimes you fall back on the promise that you made to yourself, and that's okay. And that's part of, you know, the acceptance and commitment therapy that I'm working on with my therapist, is to just be okay with that, and to still feel like my therapist talks to me about, even if I don't ever finish that book, it's still important for me to think that I'm enough, whether or not I finish some great book or not, even if that's the thing you've thought you were always going to do. It's more important to feel like you are enough no matter what. You know, this is a goal of mine. I do hope to finish it, and I've put a lot of work into it thus far already. It's just got a lot more work to do, and right now I've been, you know, depressed, and also we're in a weird time coming out of COVID, and
it's exhausting. I have spent more time with people in the last few weeks than I have all last year. Yeah, and I'm fucking exhausted.
Burned out, and I
literally burned out. Seattle was 108 degrees a few days ago. What is happening?
Yeah, and I've just wanted to stay home a lot and just get high and do nothing, because, like, before COVID, I had thought, like, okay, I'm never going to turn down plans. I want to do everything. Yeah. I'd be seeking everything out. And then I did a lot of that. I did get that for a few weeks. And I was just like, I need to not for a bit.
And that actually is a great segue into what I wanted to ask lastly, which is, like, what did you learn in our relationship? And for me, I have this very vivid memory. I was, like, sitting on the toilet in your bathroom, just so depressed I couldn't even move, and I walked into the other room, and, like, you were like, it'll pass, and you said it so calmly and so self-assuredly, like, I believed you. And I'm so fucking bad at waiting things out. Like, my urges, I give in to them pretty early on, and so that was so revolutionary to me, to, like, just see you, because you have been depressed your whole life, and, like, you were promising me, like, it does get better, You just have to wait it out.
Yeah. And I do strongly believe that. And I would highly recommend anybody read The Noonday Demon by Andrew Solomon, which is a big thing that really helped me internalize that belief. It's the best book on depression I've ever read. And it talks a lot about it. Yeah, like it is a cyclical thing, the way that it works, and it always passes if you let it. And
if you let it.
And that's
the hard part.
Yeah, like sometimes there's not a whole lot that you can actually do, but it will pass no matter what. Nobody is permanently in a depressed state. That's why it's called a depressed state. It's not a permanent. It's a state of being.
Yeah.
You know, it's not.
Well, it's like, one of my guests before, she was like, I am not my depression. I have depression.
Yeah.
And I tend to think in black and white, like, I am my eating disorder. Like, I think I tweeted yesterday something like to that effect. Like, I'm so sick of my eating disorder being the only thing that defines me. And I don't know where I was going with that.
Well, I guess you were asking, what did I learn in our relationship?
in our thing.
And I mean, I learned. I definitely learned, more about you can't force someone into helping themselves. It's a lesson I have learned the hard way a lot of times.
Yeah.
But I really wanted you to be getting help in a way that made sense to me, and in a way that was probably not entirely fair for the time that we were living in and just your current state of mind at the time. But it's also important to recognize when you can't. The person needs to get there on their own, and I think that's something that I did feel, that I was kind of more a place for you to distract from your eating disorder for a weekend or
And I'm cringing when I hear that, because I
I know it's not
it's
all
true.
That.
It's something I said.
And I also don't think that it's a bad thing to have places where you feel safe either, especially at times of severity and crisis. Like,
but that's a lot of pressure for you.
But yeah, and it's, I don't know, it's important for, I think, I don't know, it was a scenario where I lost my train of thought, so give me a minute.
It's hot in here.
Yeah, it is.
I have to close the windows when I record because of the noise.
Sure.
And yeah, it's hot. I lit candles earlier because my apartment smells like cat piss, and I wanted to cloak it. And
you basically, you can't force somebody into helping themselves. You can't make somebody want to help themselves in a specific way, and you also don't have to necessarily sit around and watch a person that you're caring about hurt themselves. Like sometimes when I brought up the distraction thing mainly because I felt like I was a distraction from what you actually needed, which was not a distraction from your eating disorder, but I felt like I was also a distraction from getting better and being able to really sit and think and work on your eating disorder. And I think you did make, like, things were hard, but you did make progress and have made progress. And even like I said, progress is not a direct straight line, but you have made progress, whether or not you think it.
Thank you. I know I have. It just doesn't feel like it sometimes.
Sure. But I also think that the progress you have made in the way that you made it, I don't think you would have been able to do so if you were still with me.
Yeah. That's a hard truth, but there it is. And yeah, I'm just really happy we're still friends, and like, you've been very supportive of me throughout my treatment journey. There's that word again, journey.
No, yeah.
I mean, yeah, I really value your friendship, and I want to see you happy.
Me too. I really do. I think it's possible.
It is possible. It's gonna get worse before it gets better, I think.
Well, the thing is, everything's gonna get worse and everything's gonna get better because, like I said, stuff passes. It's cyclical. There's gonna be worse and there's gonna be better in the future. There just always is.
I can't think of a better way to end it than there. Can you tell my listeners how to stalk you?
Yeah, you can find me most commonly. I talk about like writing stuff and also rant about leftist politics sometimes on my Twitter account, AJ Stevens Writes. That's Stevens with a V, WRITES.
Yeah, and you can read his work.
Yeah, my works. You can find it in online at the Bookends Review.
You have a website, right?
I've got a link tree. You know what? Yeah, go, just look me up on Twitter. Click on the little link tree button, and then you can read all the stuff I've written. And I'll probably put this podcast on that too, because I haven't done that many things.
I can tell that you work in marketing.
Right?
Thank you so much.
Of course.
I'm gonna give you a hug. Thank you.
Of course. I'm happy to be here.
All right, guys. Catch you later. Bye. Say goodbye.
Bye.
Air horn.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to this episode of Pickles and Vodka. If you could relate to anything we talked about, you can follow the podcast at Pickles and Vodka Podcast on Instagram, on Facebook by typing in Pickles and Vodka Podcast. You can also email me at picklesandvodkapodcast@gmail.com if you have any stories or if you just want to say hi. Thanks again for listening, and I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Stay safe.